Thanks for joining.
You're good to go. Hi, how are you?
It's all good. So it's already the second session. We have four this weekend, and it's been great. Like I had a whole variety of speakers from many different places, and it's good to have you online. I mean, your background, just to explain, just as with Karen, we met via the Horazes network, which is a great hunting ground for amazing speakers. I've been lucky to have many coming from there. And your background is in oil and gas and going all around the world and living in different places. So I'm sure you have gold nuggets of wisdom to share, and I'm looking forward to those. So welcome to the stage.
Well, thank you. I am not too sure over the nuggets, Marcelo, but yeah, I basically have sort of a. I'll do a quick monologue on some thoughts that I want to share. But as you've done with the previous two speakers, I think it'll be good to have a little bit of interaction, and you can nudge on certain points. So let me start off. I mean, fundamentally, I don't have a fascinating story here to tell to all the people who are tuned into this. Mine is I don't have a rags to riches story. I don't have I was not nominated for, 20 under 20 or 30 under 30. I don't have like a 1 million followership on Facebook or Instagram or social media. So I'm basically a very typical kind of a guy, who's studied, who's done MBA, engineering, worked in different jobs, and was lucky to, like you mentioned, lucky to sort of explore different countries in the world and live in several countries in the world. So when you asked me to come on the stage here and share my, like you said, the gold nuggets, I thought very hard actually over the last couple of days, and I thought that now that I've crossed the age of 40, I have that right to sort of say that there are certain myths upon which our life was built up, and at 40 you sort of get that get that moral right to actually bust some of the myths that you think govern your life. So what I'll do is I think I'll share a few myths which I felt were busted as I went along my journey and as I'm going through my journey. And maybe towards the end of it, perhaps Marcelo would love to get your views because you've had a colorful career. You've interacted with so many people across the globe. So let me start. I mean, I have some thoughts, so pardon me if I look down a bit. But the first thing I wanted to bring up on this forum is that this myth that we have about ourselves that we should be accepted everywhere. We should be the most popular person. We should be our thoughts should be squeaky clean. They should get a clean pass. And unfortunately, what I've learned over the years that that's not the way world works. And ironically, our greatest learning actually happens when we are rejected or we are critiqued or we are asked to, come back for another pass and improve the thoughts or processes that we have. And this is not only in what the teenagers or the youth are facing, but even us as professionals, we face not every idea is a clean pass. So rejection, how do you handle rejection? You know, how do you then pivot your ideas, incrementally improve your ideas, and then go and pitch it again? I think that's a part that is extremely important. And I think I feel that if you look at social media or unfortunately the digital world, we sort of tend to work with the people that are like-minded, and our thoughts are usually uniform, and that I think is not very good because whatever is contra to our view, we can term it as fake news or we call it as iconoclast or whatever. But I think it's important to have the discipline to listen to alternatives and get rejected once in a while. And my tip here is that if anybody starting the careers and if you have a chance, I think you should take up a sales job and actually try to sell something to a customer who doesn't want it, whether it's right from insurance or used cars or whatever that is. I think that is a solid character building, which will help the young people to progress in lives. Then I go to my second myth, which is always that we always felt, and I always felt that, hey, my friends have perfect life and I don't. And this is constant. I mean, where even when you're growing up, you're being always given examples of, this guy did so very well, this girl has done fantastically well somewhere else, how they have a big house or a big car, yada yada yada. um, I think this sort of a myth has continued in the social media uh, world that we live in, because of the curated beautiful profiles, beautiful backdrops, which everything is like, it shows the good side of you. It doesn't really show the struggling side of you, what it takes to sort of be the person you are. And what what I have also realized along the way is that, if you're attached to material possessions, I think then that's almost like it's a never ending, you get into a never ending trap, because you can never be satisfied with what you have. Even if you have a BMW X1, there is always a 5 or a 7 or whatever that is waiting for you to up yourself. So I think that's the second, sort of the myth that got busted for me, that nobody has a perfect life, not even my friends. Everybody has their pros and cons. Everybody has their share of difficulty, and I think that's how the life is. It cannot be any other way. So I'll go into number three. The third thought which I'd put out is that, and which is very pertinent, I think, is especially for the people who watch the show, is that we've always been drilled into our heads that, I can make anything happen. I am a special kid. I can really make the change in the world. Now, I think over the years, I think this myth about myself, I think, has got a bit busted. And I'll tell you why. Because I think that it's not only how good you are or what kind of skills you have, but it's also about the external circumstances. So, life is much like chemistry. The chemical has an intrinsic property, but on its own, the chemical doesn't mean a lot. It doesn't do a lot. But you need the right external pressure, external temperature, external ingredient for this chemistry to sort of come together and then create a multiplier effect, or create a longer impact or effect on the external environment. So it's yes, you can essentially make things happen, but provided the external conditions are right. And I think external conditions in this case has many connotations. In some cultures, it's luck. In some cultures, it's timing. But at the end of the day, I think that is a crucial ingredient of success, or as you go along in life. And I realize that sometimes as individuals we are ahead of time, sometimes we are behind time, sometimes it's just that it just doesn't happen, no matter how smartly we're trying to do certain things. So I think that is this is a reality where if you don't have that external factor, external luck, or external randomness working in your favor, maybe the things may not happen. But at the same time, internally, you got to be ready. I mean, you always be prepared, always be ready, hoping for the right conditions so that the multiplier effect can happen. Myth number four, which is a little close to my heart. I think it's about, I always thought that everybody had the same journey, and that's how more or less we are brought up in the education system that we have. The family cultures that we have, or the social cultures that we have, and the milestones of the journeys are pretty much, we believe, a standard for everybody, right? So you have a good school, a good university, a good job, great progress in the job, super titles that come along, big house, kids, smart kids at that, kids going to smart schools, etc. So there are all these sort of typical milestones in a journey, and unfortunately, the societal systems that we have, these milestones have predetermined timelines. So, by n+5 years, you have to be here. N+6 years, you got to be here. N+10 years, you got to be there. If not, then you sort of losing out on this race. And I think Karen was referring to this earlier in her thoughts. And what I have realized and what I've come to accept is that everybody's journey is different. I think somebody is running a sprint, somebody is running a marathon, somebody is just walking in the park, somebody is probably running backwards. Everybody is on their own. I mean, they have their own game, they have their own rules. It's not like a common monopoly where everybody is dealt with the same amount and you play on the same board. It's all different. And I think throughout my global experiences, I think thankfully I've met people who have had completely random paths and are very, very satisfied with what they do. So this is a good myth that got busted, and I think it's very important for the generation now to understand that there's no point in believing that we are all playing the same game. Everybody's playing a different game, and I think that's better because then the pressure is off. Along there, sometimes there is a question of whether you savor the journey that you're on or whether you are an optimizer. You want to maximize the journey every time, and that's a personal choice. I mean, I like to savor, amble around a bit, but I know my friends, they always want to optimize everything that they're doing, including relationships or whatever. With that, I'll come with my fifth myth. So I have one more after this, which was more like I say that, winners always win. We always, I grew up believing that, there are always winners and then there are losers. And I think our society has crazy obsession with winners. I think it's just unbelievably obsessed with winners in every forum, every form of life. Even with my 6-7-year-old kid, I mean, even there you have everybody trying to compete with each other and saying, best kid in this and that. And I think what I have realized, Marcelo, is that I think the winner and loser is the same person. As we are all governed by law of averages, which means that you are going to win some, you are going to lose some. You could be winning in certain aspect of your life. You could be in the same breath, sort of losing something, losing in the parallel aspect of your life. And it's all like a mix flux that is there. So everybody is a winner, everybody is a loser, and is the same person. And what's that got me to believe is that it's a cycle that we have to live through. So you'll have a high, almost like a sinusoidal wave, where you have a high and then you have a low. And the question then comes to our mind is, how do we manage these highs and lows? And I think fundamentally my philosophy, which is a bit like a stoic philosophy, is that you got to remember that when you are high or when you're winning, you got to be calm, and you need to remind you got to behave as if you know that you're going to lose very, very soon. At the same time, when you're losing, you got to be calm also, and you got to have that spirit that at some point in time you will win. So no matter what side of the curve you are, I think you essentially got to be very, very calm and very composed, and not get enamored by winning or not get too depressed by losing, because it will turn, and it does. Even in business is the same. Business has cycles. I mean, COVID, some of the speakers were talking about COVID is been a bad business cycle. At the same time, we had very good highs in 2016, 2015. So business is a cycle. Everything is a cycle. And I think we got to accept the fact that everything is a cycle. The other point I want to bring around in this myth about winning and losing is that what helps you during these curves. My personal opinion and something that I practice is that to have a bunch of friends who know you from, say, childhood or school or college. And if any of the viewers who are actually in the colleges and schools, make sure that you don't lose your friend, don't drift away, because I think these are the guys who would always keep you grounded. I mean, even if you win, they will, you know, pull your leg and tease the hell out of you. Even if you're losing, they will be the first ones to pump you up. They don't. They are not focused on your titles. They are not focused on your achievements. They just know you. And this core group of people is something you should make an extra effort to protect as you go along in your lives. So with that, I come to my sixth and the last myth that I wanted to discuss here. And after this, I will have a short story to wrap up my monologue and go to Marcelo to speak a little. Uh, the last one is basically, which is very, very relevant in today's times, is I always believe that external titles, external awards, recognition defines me. And this is true because, even in school, growing up, we are exposed to awards, recognitions, certificates, contests, societies which are very eclectic or selective. All this is unfortunately a part of our society. So you sort of grow up believing that, hey, my worth or my recognition is because of what they think, what awards I get, how does my shelf look, if I have all these great shields or cups lying on those shelves or not. And I think over a period of time, I've realized that I think that is a bunch of hoax. I mean, you can't really chase awards or recognitions. You got to do what you got to do. And typically the recognition that is usually that means a lot is the one that comes after we have made a sort of a significant impact on somebody, on a society or a family or family member or at a workplace, etc. Those are the true recognitions. I mean, the recognitions that the titles or the hashtags and all, they actually don't mean a lot. So how can you create a sustainable impact is basically you have to go through a lot in your life. You have to be at a cause for a long period of time. You got to make sure that you are actually having real impacts on the lives of the people that you work with or they are associated with. And the recognition that will come out of that would be a real recognition. You will feel very good about that kind of recognition. And a simple story I have to talk about this is that, you know, if you're staying in a fancy hotel like a Ritz-Carlton, and if you're paying for the room, the guards there or the staff there, they will always salute you, at least in this part of the world. They salute you and they bow to you and all that stuff. But that is not recognition. I mean, would they bow to you if you are not paying member of the if you're not a paying guest in that property? Have you really made a tangible impact on their lives? I think if they bow to you, if you're not, then that will be the true recognition that will come out of our contributions. So I think this is a pertinent topic in today's times. And my take here is that there's no need to run after recognitions. I think they will come to you once your impact is sustainable. So I've sort of covered a few myths, and I'll stop my monologue by sharing a short short story. And perhaps Marcelo, you must be familiar with this one. I think it's about this Greek philosopher called Diogenes. He was a staunch Stoic and a kind of a controversial philosopher. And his basically his value was that he was not attached to any material possession. So he did not have like a big house or whatever. He was living off the streets, and he was very detached from these possessions, but he was a man of virtue. So one day what happened was that he was somewhere in Athens, and Alexander the Great, the conqueror of the world, decided to visit him. And Alexander obviously he was ready with all his armory. He was his the group of the entourage of people, the whole pomp that goes with him. So he went to the place where Diogenes was sitting, and Diogenes was actually having a sun bath. And Alexander came to him and saw his state, and he said, "Hey, Mr. Diogenes, what can I do for you? What can I do for you to make your life better?" And Diogenes looked at him and said, "At this moment, Alexander, can you just move aside because I want the sun to come on me?" So in that story, actually, there's a lot of nuance. Um, you know, Diogenes is the guy who sort of knows what is important to him. I mean, that morning sun bath, having no possessions, all these elements are very, very important to him, as opposed to whatever material wealth that Alexander could have brought to him. So therein lies the takeaway in what I was trying to say. As an individual, you can have your own goal, you can define your own journey, you can ring fence your own objective, and then you should have the sort of courage to stick out to the path, and then say no to all these Alexanders who could come along and sort of entice you with other things. But at the same time, you got to be more practical than Diogenes. I think if your path is not working, you should have the courage to change it and move it in a different direction. So with that, Marcelo, I pause, and happy to have a conversation if there is some more time remaining. There should be.
About Pranav, the story of Diogenes is quite famous. In a previous session, I was mentioning the fact that the reasons why we admire people, they could be related to their financial success, right? But if you had someone like Bill Gates visiting a monk in a monastery in Bhutan, the level of respect will be probably mutual, will be different, right? But they have different types of achievement. And in many ways, Diogenes was an ascetic, right? He just didn't care about material things to a very strict limit and an extent that is not very common. But that was his choice, right? It gave him joy. Maybe it was out of petulance, just to say, I don't need any of you. I can survive on scraps. And in fact, his school of philosophy, the Cynics, comes from the meaning of dog, like dogging, answering Greek is a kynikos. And that's because he was living like a dog. So that was his choice. And I don't think that it will be a good choice for anyone in this time and age. But having the ability to detach yourself from material beings is really important.
Correct.
You don't have to, but it's good to know that you can. And many modern day Stoics, and I could try to consider myself one of those, and I've done some pretty extreme things to test myself, both physically and mentally. We tend to do that. We, as in, it's not like we're a club or a community, it's just people who happen to be like-minded. But the idea is that you want to make sure that, as you mentioned before, you can keep calm in front of adversity. And there's a word in ancient Greek for that, which is ataraxia. It pretty much means whatever happens to you, you accept the things you cannot change. Of course, you try to avoid being hurt. You try to get away from danger and protect people you care, and even people you don't care, because they're fellow human beings. You do try to change things that you can change. But the one thing that you don't do is to go like, oh, poor me, why is this happening to me? And there's a lack of perspective, I'd say, that most people don't realize because it's so far away. I was reading the other day how fast a Roman soldier could walk or march with their equipment, which is of course very heavy because all made of wood, steel, of whatever was available that would protect them in battle. The pace, the speed was unbelievable. You're something like, no,
Hmm.
you have
Hmm.
an ultra marathon runner would be struggling to do something like that with that much weight, or whatever, the Navy SEALs and Army Rangers. No, he was really at that level or beyond. And all of a sudden you go like, yeah, because their lives from when they were very young were very active and just got them to a different baseline. I mean, their definition of what it
Hmm.
to fit was just like so much higher than what they have today. Because, unfortunately, society steers us into making sure that comfort is prized. Comfort is good to have as an option. It's not necessarily good to have as a lifestyle, right? No, if you, we discussed that before, like if you want to be happy all the time, just pick the right drugs and stay in a bed the rest of your life, and you always be in a state of ecstasy. But this is not living, right? This is not the full length of the human experience. So having the ability to learn from when you're a teenager that challenging yourself is really relevant for so many reasons, not only because it helps you discover your boundaries, uh, it acts as the best certificate of all, right? You don't need a piece of paper from an institution when people go like, oh wow, you managed to do this, like you climbed
Hmm.
a mountain, or you went in a big track, or diving or sailing or whatever. And the challenge that you pick is your own to choose, right? But trying to figure out how far can I go, and then if you get half the way there and say, okay, I found my limit, that's fine.
Hmm.
You're
Yep.
limited to
Yep.
half of the challenge you gave yourself. And people will realize that. So go like, really? Like you did that? Well, tell me more. Like, let me learn from you. And
Right.
I would like to hear your thoughts in terms of how can you get teenagers today to challenge themselves more when the examples that they have from reality TV and the perfect Instagram pictures and all that, they lead them in an opposite direction of sulking and thinking it could have been me and why is life so unfair, which is obviously not the right state of mind for you to achieve great things. So what are your thoughts on that one?
So two thoughts there. I think one is that all of them need to, and we all need to agree that life is unfair. I think so that let's take that off the table, because there is, like I was mentioning earlier, there's element of luck. There is a lot of randomness, which we as a society we don't think, or even as humans we I don't think we can control. But I think going back to your point about striving and how do you get people to strive, I acknowledge where you're coming from. I think we a lot of hirings that we do, or what I've seen with my peers who hire the so-called millennials, etc. I think there is definitely a different sort of trigger point for them. I mean, they're driven by different cause. They're different. They're not driven by what we were as a typical Gen X. We were, or Gen Y, is that we were driven by having to work ethically, work a lot continuously, etc. So how do you get them to strive? I think fundamentally what I would, when I look at it, and I would say that there has to be some sort of a simple sheet of purpose of what you guys want to do. It may not be just a professional purpose, but it could be a sort of a life purpose in terms of, okay, professionally I want to do this, socially I want to do this, hobby wise I want to do this, as an individual, I want to have, say, pets, or I want to have whatever 10 kids or whatever that is. I think all that sort of stuff, if you are able to sort of articulate it, then that'll give these guys a stronger purpose to start working on it. I think what happens with the examples that you mentioned about whatever uh, these the so-called talent shows and stuff like that is very unidimensional. It just takes one dimension of life, say music or spell bee or whatever that is. It's just one dimension of life. And I think, in life you have at least 30, 40 dimensions as an individual. that you're going to live on. So it would be great, if there are, and through your programs, what you do, Marcelo, I mean, if you're able to nudge these guys and sort of come out that one sheet, nice, cool sheet of paper, which defines their sort of a radar of influence or a ring of what they want to do as different aspects as an individual. And once, if that purpose is sort of is 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 written down, may not be perfect, but just sort of a straw man, I think that will intrinsically make these guys, we will make them strive towards it, and we can, along the way, can be nudged along to go in these different directions. So setting that purpose, having right, um, I would say, right counseling, right, soundboarding, with the teenagers, with the young adults, would be a very good start, which will, then we can look at different tools to how to nudge them along that purpose. But uniformity of a purpose, creating simple purposes out of what you see on YouTube or Instagram or Clubhouse or whatever that is, I think that is almost belittling life. I mean, life is much more, I would say, much more multifaceted than what is usually depicted in these kind of environments.
Yeah, I mean, I believe strongly in a peer model kind of approach, right? Where
Mm.
you actually know the person you're emulating. Either we had a connection at the level of being a moderator, being a speaker in an online event, or coming as a guest speaker in one of our live events. But it's so much more powerful when you meet someone who's done something extraordinary, and you go like, no, I know this person, right? No, we had a conversation, even if it was a brief one, rather than some picture perfect image that you see on the internet and everything is retouched and ideal, because the commonalities, right, of saying, we join the same occasion, they stay with you, right? To go like, okay, this is someone I can reach out to, and I could ask
Mm.
for support, maybe can become a mentee. And that's one of the reasons why we're creating this platform, right? No, I'm joking saying that when you host events every month, it's like a job interview. Like I'm recruiting you to potentially come back as a speaker and a moderator and a mentor in sessions on topics you care about. Maybe you want to donate 1 hour of your month for a few months to talk about stoicism. Right? If it's something that you've studied and you think that you can spend an hour talking about, and stoicism is just an example, and they're willing to do that, then we can go to teenagers around the world and saying, look, it's not like this very long weekend with 30 different speakers talking about a topic which is a little bit fuzzy. And the really interesting paradox we have is that if you tell teenagers, would you like to be wiser? They go, no, what should I care? But the number of times I have our speakers coming to me saying, I really wish something like that existed when I was a teenager, is
Mm.
extremely motivating, right? So we need to figure out what is the right mix to get the teenagers to think this is really interesting. I want to invest my time and effort to do that, which is very straightforward to do with our Davos event. We asked teenagers, would like to spend a week learning how to build an igloo and survive on an avalanche and learn to make fire in a forest during winter, and you'll be meeting lots of interesting people. Like last year, they were protesting with Greta Thunberg and asking questions to Will.i.am, who happened to be there at the end of
Mm.
his WEF talk. So the live events are much easier because it's so much more comprehensible. But the online events, I think, could be more meaningful because you get to pick the country of the speaker, the industry, and we could put the speakers in touch with the teenagers. So if they're coming to your session because they like the idea of stoicism, I don't know how I'm going to convince teenagers that stoicism is something they should care about. That is going to be another challenge. It's much easier if you say, hey, you'll be learning digital marketing or
Yeah,
social
yeah, of
media, right?
course, of
But
course.
no, we'll figure out. It's like market forces, like everything else. So if the teenagers they overbooking the social media sessions, let's have more social media sessions. Let's just make sure that we use their motivation to steer them in the right direction. But yeah, that's why I'm joking, saying that this is a job interview for you to join back as a mentor.
Just wanted to pick up on that point which you mentioned. I know we may be running off, but the role model point, Marcelo, which you mentioned, I think it's really really I would say pertinent, and I think I've always had this theory of whether you should have a role model or an anti-role model, because you can't. There is never a perfect role model that you can find. I mean, even unfortunately, in domains like sports or music, you are able to role model because you can find, let's say, you want to be a Messi or a Ronaldo or whatever that is. You are able to do that, but in a normal life, you can't really find a role model. And for other aspects of your life, like how do you want to live, how do you want to be, what kind of a father or a mother you want to be, what kind of an engineer you want to be, let's say with the hard skills, what kind of a manager you want to be. For those, unfortunately, for a vast majority of topics that we are faced on everyday basis, there aren't platforms for role models. There aren't any public role models because, say, a Satya Nadella or something is too far away. I mean, it's almost an aspirational model. It's not a role model. So, if you're able to create that kind of a platform where you can get really different people sitting together and just having a conversation, I think it's an unique way to to just expose these kids and young adults to wide variety of views, and maybe one of the views will click. I mean, you don't have to be a very successful person monetarily to be a good role model. I mean, there could be a lot of stuff that people can glean off you as you interact with that person. So, I mean, if you're able to build out a platform further on this platform, or however you want to carve it out, that'll be a sort of a great nudge towards inspiring, the generation to do better.
Yeah, that's the idea. I appreciate you spending the time. I know it's super late for you over there, and great to get to know you. So now you've been forewarned. Be at some point in time asking if you'd like to come back to be a mentor. No, we can discuss terms and conditions. But I really appreciate your time.
Sure. We can discuss offline.
Oh, fantastic. So thank you so much for now. All the best, and take care. Stay healthy.